Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. So, as I have many times pointed out, I have deliberately made my arguments as concise as possible, put them into 5-minute or so videos on specific narrow subjects, making narrow points, and if somebody wishes to debunk me or prove me wrong, I'm saying please use one of those videos as, show me where I'm saying something that can't be the truth. And you know it because you have evidence that it's not the truth. You can prove it's not the truth or something. You can argue that it's an unreasonable belief, an unreasonable drawing or diagram of reality. Okay, so I've made as simple as a process as possible, trying to clean this all up. They're just physics arguments. Could you respond with a counter argument that's on the subject? And that's fair to the argument being made. Again, you don't have to paraphrase the videos because they're not that long. You don't have to take notes. Come on. And they won't do it. But what they will do is, I make a draft video about something that I observed happening, an oscillator that ends up with different masses in it that most oscillators don't have. And so clearly interesting in my opinion, interesting physics in the sense that it's certainly not physics you can find somewhere else, illustrated or diagrammed or any of that crap, at least easily find. I can't find a parallel to it. And they just mocked it. They didn't have a counter argument. They cold watched the videos. They didn't even know what the videos are about. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And one of the videos is 3 hours long, a response video. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. Okay. And then on top of that, in this context, I have stated I'm just not going to play this doxing game anymore. Okay. I've explained how this isn't my house. There's circumstances. If you can't respect that, you can't use terrorism against another person to try to drive me off the internet, that's not a reasonable tactic, and I'm not going to tolerate it. If you can't understand that, you're really just too stupid for words. So I'm done. I'm not going to watch your videos. I'm not going to mention you. I'm not going to in any way interact with you if I can avoid it. All right, because I don't have to tolerate it. It's just unacceptable. It's not a minor thing to request that you pay attention to the common courtesies on the internet. I have a screen name. That's the name I publish under. You really have no right to invade my privacy and play your little Weasley games. So either tell me you're going to stop doing it and demonstrate you're going to stop doing it, or fuck it. I'm not going to do it. So that's to Brozo and Gosling. You're going to have to make some declaration, because you're going to have to point out somewhere that yes, you get the concept and you will do the minimum and required your commenters to stay within reason. Okay, not to make threats. All right, frankly, not to threaten the security of people. It's just not an acceptable tactic in an argument. All right, so that being said, I did watch a little bit of Brozo's video, and he's just saying the same things he keeps saying, and I don't understand how he can say them. I've responded to his videos 17 times at least, pointing out how 14 isn't 16. So he predicted 16. He got the answer of 14. My prediction was 12, and it doesn't make any sense for him to declare victory or say he proved something. And then the whole launching things off a cliff, I've already drawn it at least a dozen times, and there's no point in me doing it over and over again. It's theoretically impossible for you to throw something off a cliff with twice the velocity and claim it went something other than twice the distance. So it either didn't go twice the velocity, well, that's really the only explanation. There is no other explanation other than you didn't give it twice the velocity, because there's no other physical ability for it to land anywhere else than twice as far away, because you're not absorbing its energy. And I've made that point over and over again. And so what he's proving is that somehow his launching system is perfect, and we don't even get to see that. So what's the point? I mean, it's a ludicrous argument for him to make. So, I mean, I can't even believe he started the video with that mush. And then he watched the video on a coupled oscillator and didn't even know I did the experiment, didn't understand anything about the context. It was just such a complete waste of the first 20 minutes of his video. It's just a complete nonsense waste of time. So yes, no, I'm not going to watch that crap. All right. So you got to do better than that. So anyway, comments. We'll deal with some comments. But yeah, there's got to be somewhere you people have to learn how to link. You have to learn how to, do this thing with some sort of reasoning. If you're going to claim that there's some proof somewhere, then find the time code for it in some sort of way, and you post the link to it, and then I'll watch it. But I'm not going to watch 3 hours of Brozo video. Forget it. That ain't going to happen. But there is no proof, and you know it, and I know it. We already seen his videos. Yeah, sorry, they're not the definition of a proof. All right, so this guy's responding to the lever experiment. So yeah, and the only argument the Falwell guy made was some stupid argument that it's a tethered pendulum. What the hell's the word I'm using? So I should pause and think, what the hell is the word? And it's like, yeah, so what? You can do that. You can make the oscillator out of a lot of things. Professor Lewin has one on the air cart, right? With a spring in between the two air carts, and he pushes one cart, and the other cart moves, and it oscillates across. But they're even masses, and that's the difference. And so a coupled oscillator is a real concept. It's not like it's always coupled pendulums, you stupid fuck. So, but that's his counter argument, that it's, that it's a pendulum. Well, no, it's also a lever. That was the whole reason why it worked with uneven masses, is because I was using the lever. Now, the fact that confused people, I mean, I drew the picture of it. I mean, I'll draw it one more time, just for the sake of argument, just illustrating how you people can't figure out that these people are just too stupid. I mean, I draw it. It's so simple, and they're, they can't get it right. They can't figure out what the hell I'm talking about. I mean, how can they miss it? So, I mean, I drew this. Okay, this is what I drew. I drew the experiment. Okay, I showed what it was. It's a thing, tied to the ceiling. All right, it's a lever tied to the ceiling. Okay, one thing hanging there, one thing hanging there. Okay, 2-to-1 relationship. Okay, then a long string. Okay, and the weights. Okay, now this is the half mass. All right, not complicated. And all I pointed out is that yes, you can push one of these with energy. All right, and the energy will oscillate. This one will swing, and then this one will stop, and then this one will swing, and this one will stop, and this one will swing, and this one will stop. And I'm saying that momentum is conserved. That is, the energy it's not lost less, but it's as close as you can get, in the sense that it goes on for quite a long time, losing very little energy with each permutation. And so what? This is too confusing? I'm sorry, too silly. Alright, anyway. It's just become impossible to communicate with people. Alright. So, this comment is, after all this time, you have to ask this question. I'm curious about your understanding of how conservation of momentum works. What are you curious about? Every system, you can either, I've said it overtly, there's energy, okay? I'm saying gravity's an active stream, okay? It's not nothing, it's a something, and it pushes you into the earth. Now, what's so complicated about that? You push up against it, it's going to give you back exactly what you used to push up against it, because it's a constant force, it's an even force. So if you paddle upstream, the amount of energy used paddling up the stream will be exactly the energy you get flowing back down the stream. You'll get back what you put in. So you could argue the system always has the same energy in it. It doesn't change. So what's so complicated? Anyway. I'm curious about your understanding of conservation of momentum works. Would you say a regular single pendulum conserves momentum? Well, obviously the point is when the system works, does it conserve the momentum? Do you get the same energy going back and forth? As each time it would hit something, would you say, yes, it's conserved most of the energy? That's what conservation is about. So obviously that's what it's doing. It's conserving the energy. The velocity at the bottom point decreases at a very slow rate because it's losing energy very slowly. The weight swings backward and forward each time it reaches its maximum height. It stops for a brief moment before reversing its direction. During that moment, it has zero momentum. Yeah, and the rubber ball has zero momentum and hits the brick wall. The argument would be, is you're arguing, does it conserve the energy? So I throw the ball with a certain amount of energy. I'm saying, well, does it conserve it? And we can say, we can place a number on, say, what, 75% conserved or 85% conserved. Yeah, obviously the ball stops. So what? We're talking about what does the system do, shit for brain. I'm just sure you can't really be sincerely making this point as if you don't understand the concept of storing energy. You really don't? Okay. How do you square that with the idea that momentum is being conserved? So, what's the point? There's just no point in talking to people who are going to pretend they can't understand that you're saying that in any system where things interact with other things, that the other things could be like two magnets facing each other, and that you could apply pressure and they're going to give back the pressure. What's so complicated? We're just arguing about things that aren't permanently deforming. So if two cars crash and all the fenders bend, well, yeah, then you can say, gee, all the energy was used up bending things and burning things and making things fly off. You can account for all the energy. I mean, it's not any more complicated than Feynman's block analogy. Energy is these little blocks that you can't destroy. So yeah, you can hide them. You can throw them out a window. You can put them down a sink drain. You can put them in lots of places, but you really can't destroy them. Anyway, classical physics. See, this is just a lie. Classical physics doesn't say any of the shit they say. Classical physics is Galileo, Newton, and Descartes. They understood what momentum was and what a system was. Would say that momentum is conserved in any closed system. So again, this nonsense about a closed system. I don't understand. If you're going to add energy, then gee, of course the energy you had is going to have more energy added. So why should I say there's some other system? Why would I pretend we're talking about a stream inside of like the ocean or something? No, we're talking about a stream. An isolated, closed, system. It doesn't have other things acting on it. There's no other source. It's just so pathetic. But the system isn't closed. But this system isn't closed. What system isn't closed? A pendulum isn't a closed system? I mean, I just don't understand how somebody can sit there and argue that a pendulum isn't a closed system. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's not a closed system? It has every appearance of being a closed system that slowly loses its energy to the atmosphere. The momentum has been transferred into whatever is holding the opposite end of the string in place. So again, you say it has. I'm just saying, where have you ever proven any of that? None of that stuff is moving. So you're claiming every time the pendulum swings, the Earth goes this way, and then the Earth goes that way, and the Earth goes this way, and the Earth goes that way. Well, do you have any evidence that any of that shit happens? I think the ball bearing on the anvil proves, right? The ball bearing that bounces 200 times on the anvil is pretty much proving it's not hitting the Earth and moving the Earth each time it goes down. So each time it goes down, it's hitting the Earth and pushing the Earth. So the Earth is gaining 20 or 30 times the momentum that the ball started with. So I put 20 into the system and I get 200 out of the system. That's your theory? Well, I'd say it's pretty goddamn stupid. I'm saying you don't know much about conservation if you think that's possible. But I know you don't like that idea. I'm sorry, I don't think the idea has any validity at all. That's right, I don't think you can make free energy. I believe Feynman is correct. Feynman's analogy is appropriate. You can't make blocks, you can't destroy blocks. The other end of the string is tied to the house, which is attached to the earth, which is too heavy to move much. Well, whether it moves much or any, the point is it has to do something if you're saying it absorbed the energy. My simple argument is it just reflects it, just like it's reflecting your energy right now. You are pushing into the earth is reflecting the energy. It's saying, no mas. I know wanty your movement. I know have use for. Shit. Classical physics would also say that, so it's not classical physics that says any of this crap, it's just a lie. Would also say that energy is being conserved. So one minute you say it's not conserved, and now you're saying it is conserved. Which is it? I don't understand what you're arguing. Both sides out of your fucking moronic face. It's being transferred. Classical physics will also say that the energy is being conserved. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, the net energy. I mean, again, you're sitting here saying that somehow my momentum can't be stored in something, but your kinetic energy can be. Do you see your duplicity here? You're saying somehow kinetic energy can be stored in a spring, but the momentum can't be. Fuck you. Too ridiculous an argument. It is being transferred between KE and PE and back again. So again, more nonsense about what you call a transfer, okay? Obviously, you don't put anything into gravity in the sense gravity isn't a spring. You don't store it in the spring. It's more applicable to think of it as a stream of water. Gravity is a constant kinetic energy. It is not a potential energy. It is not a stored energy. It's not any of that shit. It's active photons, you could argue. Just like the sun is producing active energy. Alright, the weight gains height as it loses speed. So this is just all so tiresome. And loses height as it gains speed, but I know you don't like that idea either. I perfectly am in agreement with that's what takes place, but I'm going to argue to you that yes, you don't have any energy. Okay, so I take my motor and I motor my boat upstream, I give it a burst. Okay, and it goes a certain distance upstream and then stops. When it stops, it doesn't have anything. It doesn't have any potential. Doesn't have anything. It has to wait and get it from the stream. The stream will give it to it, but it doesn't have it until the stream gives it to it. And the stream will lose energy pushing the boat. That's a fact. So the energy of the stream won't be conserved because a boat by the river and so on. Oh, good. So you get that analogy. I just don't know why you're this pretending you don't understand the concept of storing energy is just too ridiculous. It's part of the system, right? The rubber ball hitting the brick wall. The rubber ball is part of the system. It's allowed to store energy. Oh, damn. As for your pair of pendulums, classic physics would predict that one mass swings with 1.14. So again, where you don't have anything defending that prediction at all. You have nothing. You have no facts defending that statement that any part of classical physics would say that. When every part of classical physics talks about the obligation to conserve momentum. So it's just absolute nonsense. You have any evidence that any classic physics argument could be made defending this 1.4 crap. That the oscillator has, that it has a certain momentum on this side, and then it has less momentum on this side, and then it has more momentum on this side, and then it has less momentum on this side. That somehow you could have energy oscillate in a system where you don't have to conserve the momentum. It's absolute nonsense. All right, anyway, 1.4 times the speed of the two mass at their respective peak speeds. So again, you have no evidence for that assertion. So you just make these lies up. Meaning that they have the same KE, or that the one mass climbs twice as high. So I don't know how the one mass could climb twice as high. Okay. How could it do that if it only has 1.4 the energy? Sorry, that doesn't make any sense. All you assholes say that springs have 4 times, twice the compression, 4 times the energy. It takes 4 times the energy. not 1.4. I'm not gonna do anything with 1.4. Oh, this is such tangled nonsense. As high from the bottom of the swing as a two-mass before reaching their respective turning points. Well, obviously it's also not in these, it's angular, so you have to figure out that it's how much distance that's against gravity. It's not distance linearly. So the two answers aren't the same. So even what you're saying is nonsense. Meaning they have the same PE. That prediction does your model. What prediction does your model make? I clearly have pointed out what prediction it makes. That you have to conserve the momentum. So yes, the lighter object will travel something like twice the arc, okay, because it's going to end up going 4 times higher into the gravity. But obviously 4 times higher into the gravity just means, you go higher, as you're swinging this part, you're not going up and down much when you're swinging at the bottom of the circle. When you're swinging at the top of the circle, you end up going a lot of vertical distance and very little sideways distance. All right. I know you said there shouldn't be any need to measure anything, but I don't see why that would be the case. Where did I say there's no need to measure anything? I said all you have to measure is the velocities. The masses are 2 to 1. I'm just saying you don't need to know the exact number. It's 2 to 1. So that's the assertion I'm making. So even if I'm just saying there's very low odds that the masses aren't as I stated them to be. It's quite obvious. It's pieces of steel cut to specific lengths. It's a 2 to 1 relationship. It's not going to be far off. And yeah, you have to get the velocities, and that's the problem part. Because we have to use the lousy, stinking frame rate. Okay. How does instantaneous action at a distance work? I mean, nice relativist video this morning, by the way. Not. This is just such non-counter argument. I mean, that gay theory that Einstein won the Nobel Prize for. So again, he didn't win it for relativity. So you're not even smart enough to know that, little fact. I mean, that's a kind of everybody knows that, oh yeah, you got it for the photoelectric effect. He didn't get the Nobel Prize for the relativity theory. Shithead. So whatever. Enough of that crap. The rest is just, death. Fuck ass, don't come to blah blah blah. Death threats, blah blah blah. Anyway. What are we looking for? We're looking for physicist Michael now. So I suppose I will pause and go there. Alright, so back to my comment to physicist Michael saying, okay, I used a lever to create a coupled oscillator between a 1 mass and a 2 mass. I think you would concede that momentum must be conserved in the coupling. So in the whole coupling, it's a system. The argument is just kind of simple that wherever the energy is, whether it's half here and half there, or whether it's all here or all there, that there's the same total movement in the system. Now, that's clearly what's being argued and stated. Again, I could show the Professor Lewin video of the cart, and he's talking about the center of mass is moving at a constant rate, kind of indicating the point that the energy is always the same amount of energy. It's just in different places. All right. I would like to hear if you have some explanation regarding how kinetic energy can be conserved. Right, so it's just like the lever argument. I mean, if you're going to say that the kinetic energy is conserved, then you have to explain that the momentum isn't. Because when uneven masses, it can never be any other way. When you take energy from one small mass and put it into a big mass, or vice versa, the kinetic energy theory loses all compatibility with momentum. And there's no way that if I transfer all the energy this thing has and I put it into this thing, there's no way to conserve both kinetic energy and momentum. If we can't agree on that, then there's no point in talking to you because you're an imbecile. Okay, there's no other way to look at it. It can't possibly work because of the squared velocity term. Oh, shit. So, so I got a non-answer again. So Mindless Marvels answered with nothing. I already read that crap. It doesn't say anything. So then physicist Michael says, no, momentum is not conserved in the pendulum for the reason that MM provided. So there's no reasoning here. Okay, he says, how exactly did you couple the pendulum. No, okay. The masses are connected to strings that exert external forces on them. So clearly there really isn't any external force. There's nothing in that system that's adding energy to the system. I put energy in, and the energy stays in the system of the moving objects. The two metal pieces of metal won't both stop. They don't ever, okay? They won't both stop, all right, until all the energy has been extracted from the whole pendulum system. So there's always energy apparent. All right, it's not even stored in gravity or hiding somewhere. There's always momentum apparent, velocity apparent. So it's just such a nonsense statement that this is, the fact that it's tied to the ceiling means there's external energy in the system. There is no external source of energy. It's just a lie. I mean, no experiment on Earth could ever be performed as a closed system by their rules, because every experiment is somewhere attached to the Earth. I mean, it's just too silly. All right. Okay, the strings acts as an external force. So again, it's not an external force. It's not an extra force. It's not an added force. It doesn't add anything to the system. It's just nonsense. So in order to get the system that conserves momentum, you need to include whatever the strings are attached to the Earth via whatever support structure you have. So again, every experiment that's on the ground, so he can't do the lever experiment because he has it tied to the Earth, and therefore it's invalid. Right? So no experiment can ever be performed that's at all ever tied to anything. Okay? Because that's somehow a new source of energy. It's not a new source. It's not doing anything. All right. Consider a pendulum swing back and forth. The momentum is conserved for that single mass. So again, so he's saying at every moment, the only way you can use the word conserved isn't back and forth. So every time you hit a ping pong ball back and forth, you can't talk about conservation. Or what's a good example? Pinball machine. Yeah, you could say in a sense an old pinball machine, okay, where it was just rubber bands and there was no motors involved. You could argue that the only thing the ball has is the momentum it starts with, okay, and that's all, the momentum it has. And then you can, push on it, into rubber bands, and you can add little bits of energy from the outside. So that would be obvious adding energy from the external world. But if you couldn't touch it, then you couldn't add any energy. I mean, this is just such bullshit. Certainly not. Yeah, that's right. And especially with two pendulums. But the argument is when there's two pendulums, the energy is always visible. One of them's always actively moving, or they're both moving, or the other one's moving. But they're always, the velocity is always visible. It's not being stored somewhere. All right. At the far ends of the motion, it's momentarily not moving, zero momentum. So again, more of this stuff that they use the word system, and yet they pretend there's no system. I mean, this is so dishonest. If they describe their own experiments by these standards, again, none of their experiments could qualify as being conservational experiments. There'd be no obligation to conserve because, yes, your cart is touching the ground, therefore the experiment is invalid because the ground is adding energy or doing something to it. Now, it's just such a pile of shit. Sorry. I mean, this is an insult. Okay, there's no way to take this crap as anything other than an insult to my intelligence. That you're going to pretend we're not talking about the conservation of the energy in the system. Of course, we're talking about the conservation of the energy in the system. And at the other times, it is moving net zero, non-zero momentum. Even in your model, I don't see how you can say momentum is conserved. I mean, I'm pointing it out right in the video. It's right in the video. I'm showing you one object's moving, the other object's moving. The claim is the lighter object has to be moving twice the speed. That's the simple claim, that you're conserving the momentum. That you can't not conserve the momentum. You can't lose the momentum on this side. When it oscillates on this side, it loses half the momentum. And then when it oscillates on this side, it goes back to being full momentum. and then it loses half the momentum again, and then it gains half the momentum again. Come on. It's ridiculous. And at other times it is moving non-zero momentum. Even in your, having two masses just makes it more complicated. So, it just doesn't make any sense. No, having different masses does, but it's not really, what's complicated about it? One side swings back and forth. The motion gradually moves to the other thing, starts moving, starts moving. Then all it's moving, 100% of the movement is in this object, and this one has 0%. And then it migrates back, and this one has 100%, and that one has 0. I mean, what's complicated? I mean, it's just kind of a bullshit word to pretend that this is somehow too complicated. We can't follow along. Shit. But it's still not conserving momentum. So he is literally arguing that you're not conserving the velocity, when clearly you are. I mean, the velocity mass component, the momentum. All right. Kinetic energy isn't conserved in this experiment, so nothing's conserved, even though it's obviously conservational. It obviously goes on for 15 minutes, well, 10 minutes anyway. Making the exchange for, visibly making an exchange for 10 minutes. Okay, something's being conserved. Oh, damn. The total mechanical energy would be conserved. Well, isn't that what the fuck I'm talking about? I mean, what is the fucking difference between the total momentum and the total mechanical energy? What is the difference between those two fucking goddamn things except semantical word game bullshit? What the fuck do you think I'm talking about when I say momentum? Is there some other thing than the mechanical energy? And why would I talk about something other than the total mechanical energy? Yes, it's the total mechanic. I put a certain amount of mechanical energy in. I'm just saying, what's the total? The system is retaining the energy. And how is it behaving as it retains the energy? As it conserves the momentum? What's it doing while it's conserving the momentum? See, this is just so, it does piss me off. I mean, it just pisses me off, and then I get, defensive and start fighting back. But I mean, he wouldn't do this to his own experiment, this minutia, nitpicky bullshit, which would include the kinetic energy plus the gravitational energy. So again, obviously the gravitational energy is only incidentally involved, because in a sense it really isn't storing anything. Okay, it's just allowing a place for the exchanges of the energy to take place. All right, when HMA swings upward, plus the spring energy when the spring is stretched or compressed. So yeah, I'm just saying, like, okay, there are points where, say one pendulum has all the energy. I mean, obviously there's a single second you could take right there, and you could say both objects aren't moving technically. But this one's going to swing because of the fact that it did store the energy in gravity. So the system still has the energy. There's just no doubt that everybody knows that. So why are you pretending you don't know that? That the system is what you're measuring. You're not measuring specific points in time and pretending you don't understand that the rubber ball hit the wall and the rubber ball's compressed. And yes, the rubber ball stopped moving, but the rubber ball compressed, so it changed, and it has stored the energy in its compression. I mean, come on. It's just, this is, the air pressure in the ball went way up. It's a fact. So the energy's right there. I can just see the air pressure in the ball, right? And I could just measure that and say, see, there's where the energy is. Whatever. It's just too stupid. All right, again. You mentioned, again, at the beginning of your video that momentum and energy are the same thing. Yes, obviously that's my claim. There's only one kind of energy. It's stuff, mass, moving. And there's no reason to square either the mass or the velocity. Neither one of them is a squarable term. Maybe in your model, but that's not something we're going to agree on. Well, the point is what's the truth, and that's what we're trying to argue, is do you have any evidence validating your theory of this squared term? So the whole point is I'm arguing for 350 years your evidence has sucked. Leibniz didn't have any. De Chatelet's clay experiments are bullshit, and after that, you don't have anything. I think I've demonstrated, well, I don't think you have, but okay. I mean, you've done a classic, narrow experiment, okay, where you claim you created free momentum. By my definition, there's no other way to look at it. I'd say that's a bold claim, and if you're going to make it, then you're going to have to make sure that experiment is above any kind of critique, and I just don't think it is. Especially in the circumstance where in the second experiment you made the same spring produce a different amount of total momentum. Okay, in the previous video covering collisions and conservation of energy, that there are in fact two different quantities that we need to consider. So, says you, I know you don't agree, but that's where I'm at. Well, I don't, it's not about where you're at, it's about where your argument's at. And so your argument is you won't show me it taking 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast, or 9 times the fuel to go 3 times as fast. You won't show any real demonstrations of kinetic energy, and instead you'll show some little niche experiment done under these little niche circumstances and say this experiment shows that we can make free momentum. I'm sorry. No, you gotta do better than that. In case you don't see my other post, yes, I already did, but whatever. So we don't need to read that part. He's waiting on the carbon fiber thing. Lever example. Since you objected to the wooden bar, which you did not object to in your original discussion. So that's just a lie. I mean, the original discussion I pointed out should be stiff and light. I pointed these things out, and obviously, I didn't get to flex your piece of wood, but it would have been pretty easy to figure out that wood isn't ideal. I'm pretty damn sure in the live conversation I did not say, oh yeah, the wooden stick is perfect. I think it was a long way from saying anything like that. Okay. Nor did you object to anything about the fulcrum mounting. Well, yeah, I did. I said it's a pretty damn big gear. So, whatever. I am hoping, I said something simple. Keep it as simple as possible. So I described just all you need is a rigid fulcrum. It has to be rigid. That's what I said. I'm hoping to complete those tests and hopefully post either next week or the week after. Yeah, whatever. My argument is that you haven't completed this experiment and yet you're already producing data points where you're claiming victory, okay? And they're data points about an experiment I did object to. I objected to any notion that spring should have anything to do with this at all, that any bending or springing should be taking place. I even pointed out repeatedly to you that I don't think the experiment is being done correctly if anything moves backwards. So if anything moves backwards, you got a problem. I did say that. This preview video was intended to simply say I've been working on it. Well, I wish that's what it simply said. And just simply said, oh yeah, I got technical issues. This is all as far as I've gotten. Not very good yet, so don't draw any conclusions. You didn't do any of that. You basically partially declared victory, okay? But there have been delays. I did already have examples of different cases. Yeah, you even said that in your video. Well, I did this other bar, metal bar, and the results came out the same way. And even when I took the springs off, same way. You just, did this hand waving. Yeah, it's all been done. I already proved it all. Okay, we're recorded, but my computer crashed before I could edit the video, so your assertions of me avoiding the experiment are simply untrue. My assertion was, as I stated it, that you're not doing my experiment and then you're claiming that my model failed. You were even claiming that I couldn't predict what the spring would do. I could have made a prediction. I said I don't fucking care because it's not what I'm after. So, you lied that somehow my model fails to explain. When no, it can perfectly explain if you want to put springs in shit, but I don't understand how that explains anything. How does springs help the experiment work? These parts, along with more details of the setup, the analysis, etc., weren't included in the video. That's right, because they were saved on a computer that wasn't working. Fine. This was explained in the video description. Yeah, well, it should have been in the video itself, shouldn't it have been? Yeah. I don't appreciate the response of my attempt to provide an update. Well, I don't think that's what it was, frankly, and it wasn't an honest update. And frankly, you said in that video that, see, look, his model isn't working. You did that, okay? So you were making an argument based on this partial video with partial evidence under the very circumstances I said not to do the experiment, the way I said not to do it. I said start with two equal masses to see if you can goddamn convert the momentum from one side to the other. Can you do the experiment where you conserve the energy, whatever you want to call it, kinetic energy or momentum? So use the same masses and see if you can get the energy to go from cart A into cart B. I made that explicit and you ignored it entirely and then claimed a kind of victory. So yeah, I shouldn't be pissed. Fuck you, I should be. All right. And get honest feedback to be straight up slander. Okay. Attempting to provide an update and get honest feedback. What? This was explained in the video description. I don't appreciate the response of my attempt to provide an update and get honest feedback to be straight up slander. So the point is that you can call it slander. I'm functionally, I think I can make the reasonable, fair argument that you unfairly treated my theory, my model, and my fucking statements in my fucking goddamn when we talked about this fucking experiment. All right? The fact is you did slander me, okay, with misconceptions of what I stated. And again, when you said that my model can't explain, when you didn't ask me to explain spring experiments, and I did make it quite clear I couldn't give one fucking single fuck about any spring experiment. For the very reason I pointed out, any energy going backwards is lost energy, okay? You can't do the conversion. You can't make the energy go from this cart into that cart if that cart's going backwards. Shit. But I'm happy to see you're going to give trying the experiment yourself. Why? We'll see what we both get. Whatever. Yeah, we'll see. Alright, so then Mindless does this backtracking shit. So he makes all these fucking crap shit comments, and then he said, I'll make a concession to DS. I mean, what the fuck? See, I mean, you're just this stupid and reckless. So you make a big sloppy mess, and it's like the newspaper. On page 47, you say, oh yeah, well, never mind. Fake news. This actually is a good experimental proposal. So all of a sudden now he gets it. Something that I drew that was really simple, and somehow he couldn't figure it out on his own, that, yeah, that's an interesting concept. You know, I had to beat it into him, and now he's conceding. Okay. You should add this topic, motion-coupled oscillators, to the list of experiments. It would be interesting to see how energy is transferred from one mass cart to two mass cart and vice versa, and what velocity measurements you get as a result. Any experiment that demonstrates this conflict between momentum and kinetic energy, again, anything that has different masses where you're transferring the energy from one object to the other object has to, by actual undeniable fact of the universe, it has to destroy either kinetic energy or momentum. So you have to understand that one of these two theories can't be believed in as being something indestructible. And again, I'll go back to Professor Lewin's claim, you know, nature can deal with kinetic energy one way or another, but nature can't finagle momentum. A discussion on resonant modes would also be interesting. Anyway, your channel is the only channel on YouTube that does precision testing. So again, this precision testing is what I would claim is just part of the dodge, you know, part of the fake physics. because clearly he got a result, okay? The same spring, he pushes out. Same spring, pushing out. In one case, it creates 100 momentums. In the other case, it creates 200 momentums. And what's the implication of that? That I just keep putting heavier and heavier things in front of the spring, and I get more and more momentum. Yet, when I put lighter and lighter things in a gun, I get more and more kinetic energy. You can't see how that doesn't make any sense. That's not my definition of precision, which is why I really like the content. I'm not sure if this stuff will get you many clicks or recommendations on YouTube. I'm not sure there's any people with a brain on YouTube, or on Earth, frankly, anymore. But in a fair and just world, it would. So whatever. And then he says, please try to value and spend your time carefully. I mean, it's so patronizing. It's just amazing that somebody would say that to somebody else. But it's just so, God, I mean, you're talking to a physicist, so a physicist doesn't know what time is and how, whether he should deal with it carefully or not. I mean, it is just, please don't take any wooden nickels. I mean, it's just, it just shows how arrogant this little fuck is. Alright, anyway, so DraftScience, I say. Alright. Unfortunately, that we can't seem to keep the conversation focused on physics disagreements. Clearly, I don't think your model is at all well evidenced. So again, we're just dying for it. I'm saying link me to your evidence. So please, somebody, give me the time code to this piece of evidence that shows kinetic energy working, shows this V squared thing happening. You can't produce any links to any experiments showing quadratic fuel requirements or quadratic work done. I've made 12 short videos on specific elements of the subject, and you haven't substantially refuted anything said in those videos. Unfortunately, I don't really like text conversation, and even when I resort to it, I don't think your responses are very responsive. I'm still not clear on what you believe or claim. So again, that's the funny part. Right after his relativity videos, it's like, what does he actually say does happen on Earth? I mean, he's made all these bullshit statements about how Earths move and this moves and the sun moves and the whole universe spins around and all this bullshit happens, so you can't tell anything. So I just say overtly, does it take 9 times the fuel to go 3 times faster? So just to answer the question, if you're claiming that's true, then why don't we do that experiment? Because that just sounds like something really easy to test. It takes 9 times the electricity to make a motor spin, 3 times faster. I think you're going to fail to find evidence of that. If I force a stream of water through a narrower trough, increasing the velocity by 2 and decreasing the volume by 1/2, will it make a water wheel produce more joules of energy? So it's a simple enough question. The obvious answer is no, it won't. So no matter what I do, I put the water through a little fire hose, I do all these different things, I'm not going to make the water more powerful. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to have more net capacity to move matter. All right, it's just not. 1,000 atoms moving 1 mile an hour is the same as 1 atom moving 1,000 miles an hour. All right, and this stupid Farley. Astounding! Even after all these years, he can twirl you around his finger like a yo-yo string. You don't twirl the yo-yo string. We are waiting for DS to show us the simple lever experiment, which will prove his claims. Let's already point out that Brozo already did what you could argue was the catapult experiment. Okay. So he catapulted with a lever and got results that clearly weren't consistent with kinetic energy being conserved. He tried a couple of lame attempts, so that's not true, right? I did do 2 of them on the macro scale, and the what was demonstrated is that the mass of the objects and the mass of the lever were too close to each other to have any hope of getting the right answer. Realized he is lost. No, I have already done, frankly, I already constructed the big lever experiment, and so it's just a matter of little things like securing the fulcrum and different things. I made a discovery. Obviously I'd already done some of this work. So it's just silly to say I'm not still doing it. Of course I am. Made a let's see, and made a what is this? Diversionary video, so you fell for his trick. So again, I pointed out how, it's not really a, it's not a deliberate diversion. I mean, I was clearly diverted, okay, by the fact that like I said, when I was going to be hanging the lever lower, I realized, well, what if I hang the lever and suspend the weights? What really does happen? I mean, part of me wanted to see, if it could possibly matter at what height the weights were at. But anyway, so, I mean, the video speaks for itself. I mean, it's an interesting effect. And people are going to, just out of petty spite and, petty resentment, you're going to pretend it's not an interesting thing, that you weren't at all interested to see two different masses in a coupled oscillator. I don't know how that couldn't be interesting to somebody who gives a shit about physics. All right, well, anyway, Mindless says, yes, sadly he can. I don't know what to do about it. So, I mean, what a pile of mush. I mean, your psychological issues, really, you should be above that kind of horse shit, frankly. I think you're probably old enough to know better. And that you ought to be a little more careful in how you comment, fuckhead. So then, Ian Gosling says, love the honesty. Yeah. Stand firm and hold his feet to the fire about Stephen's launcher experiment. So what is this? What is this Stephen's launcher experiment with perfect results and clear proof? Why can't you leave a time-coded link to this perfect fucking video experiment that Brozo did? Why? The one I saw where he verified the velocity, right? Where he made real effort to verify the half mass is going twice as fast and the full mass is going one velocity. The one where he verified the speeds and collided them into a spring is the one where he got the result of 14. And I predicted 12 and he predicted 16. Now, how is that proving how great this guy is at making proof videos? I mean, he claimed victory when he clearly didn't win. Is that the kind of guy you trust? All right, and yeah, and again, we're back to the billiard ball one. What's the explanation? Just like you hiding the clay experiment. I mean, what's the explanation? I have to debunk the experiments that come out your way. You don't have to debunk the one that comes out my way. So do the experiment again, show it, and show how the clay is the culprit. The clay is lying. Oh, you're such a piece of shit. Yeah, so that's where we stand at the moment. So we'll see. And such. But yeah, I'm really not going to interact with people who can't, do the little minimum stuff. And if you can't be minimally, ethical, then fuck you. Till dead. I can't wish you more harm. I mean, terrorism is terrorism. Again, what's the fucking point of it? I've already explained the circumstance. There's absolutely no reason for anybody, frankly, there's no reason for anybody to have their personal information so easily accessed on the internet. It's just disgusting that this takes place, blah, 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 blah. Because there's way too many kooks out there who want to, who are like mindless marbles, so arrogant, and think they should decide other people's destiny. They have to go clean it up themselves. Vigilantes, if you want to call them that. And you're just selling cross-burning kits. That's all you're doing. And you should go to jail for that, frankly. Anyway, till next time and such and so forth and whatnot.